Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we sift through layers of sources to unearth the most surprising and essential nuggets of knowledge for you. Today, we're inviting you into a world shimmering with ancient poetry, philosophical riddles, and a literary figure whose true identity has been debated for centuries. We're talking about Omar Khayyám and his endlessly renowned Rubáiyát.
And our mission for this deep dive is really to explore the winding path of Khayyám's work. We want to look at why his famous quatrains became, well, such a battleground for wildly conflicting interpretations.
Right, like was he this hedonistic Epicurean just focused on pleasure?
Exactly. Or maybe a profound Sufi mystic using allegory. Or, even a frustrated rebel reacting to the turmoil of his time. We'll trace the fascinating history of his texts, the translations, and see how his words got shaped and reshaped over centuries.
And for this journey, our insights are largely drawn from some pretty comprehensive academic research. We're leaning heavily on a pivotal thesis from 1972, an Arab perspective on the Rubáiyát of Omar Khayyám by Elias Eagle.
It's incredibly detailed. It gives us historical context, literary analysis, and looks at various translated versions too. It's a great foundation.
Okay, so let's dive in. The first big thing seems to be this huge literary puzzle. What did Khayyám actually write?
That is the absolute core controversy. I mean, you've got hundreds, maybe over 750 quatrains Rubáiyát printed in Persia and India over the years.
Wow, 750?
Yeah, but scholars, generally speaking, think only about 120 to maybe 150 are authentic.
That's a huge difference. Why so much uncertainty?
Well, the big problem is Khayyám himself didn't compile his own works. He didn't put together a definitive collection.
Oh.
He left them to students, to reciters. And as you can imagine, that led to just immense confusion down the line about primary texts. The manuscripts we do have mostly date from the 18th century onward.
So much later than when he lived?
Much later. It's like trying to piece together, a Shakespeare play from scattered notes found centuries later, mixed with fan fiction.
Right. A literary detective story, as you said.
It really is. Researchers were desperate, of course, to find the earliest possible manuscripts.
Yes.
Older usually means more authentic, right?
Usually.
They found quite a range. Some small ones, like the Owsley or Bodleian manuscript from 1460 that only had 158 quatrains. But then you get later finds like the Calcutta Asiatic Society manuscript from 1548, and suddenly it's got over 500.
Whoa.
And there was a 13th century Cambridge manuscript discovered too. It immediately throws up this challenge.
Yeah.
What's genuinely Khayyám and what got tacked on over time.
And didn't Robert Graves claim to have found a really early one?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
He and Omar Ali Shah translated what they described as the earliest and most authoritative Rubáiyát, a 12th century text. Apparently, it had been kept privately by a Sufi family for generations, which just adds another layer of intrigue, doesn't it?
Definitely. So why this huge jumble? Why so many variations in the numbers?
Well, okay, beyond just simple mistakes by copyists, which definitely happened, our sources point to a few really interesting reasons. One idea is that admirers, people who just loved his style, that mix of humor and deep thought, simply expanded his work as they copied it. Added their own verses, perhaps.
Okay, that makes sense. Like tributes almost.
Kind of, and then it gets maybe a bit more complicated.
Yeah.
Other poets, lesser-known ones, might have feared, public backlash for their own more controversial ideas.
Ah.
So they used Khayyám's famous name as a sort of cover, attributed their own quatrains to him.
Using his reputation as a shield.
Yeah.
Clever, but confusing for us later on.
Very confusing. And it wasn't always innocent admiration or fear. There was a commercial side, too.
Oh.
Yeah, after Khayyám died, scribes realized, hey, more poems attributed to the famous Khayyám means more sales. So there was an incentive to, let's say, inflate the collection.
Right. Pad the numbers.
Exactly. And some even deliberately added themes that Khayyám himself probably wasn't that bothered about, things like repentance, faith in God, to make the whole collection seem more religiously orthodox, more acceptable.
So it would sell better, appeal to more people?
Precisely. Which led to his work growing, as our source puts it quite vividly, like a snowball rolling down the cliffs.
That's a great image. This uncertainty, it really makes you think, doesn't it? How much of any artist's legacy is actually theirs versus this sort of collective creation over time?
Absolutely. It's a fundamental question. Scholars tried to sort it out. There was this Russian Orientalist, Valentin Zhukovsky, who came up with the wandering quatrains theory.
Wandering quatrains.
Yeah, his idea was that if a quatrain attributed to Khayyám was also found in another poet's work, it probably wasn't Khayyám's. It had just sort of wandered over to him.
Okay, seems logical.
It did, but then he later had to admit it wasn't foolproof. because some of those wandering quatrains turned up in manuscripts that were actually older than the other poets they were attributed to.
Oh, wow. So back to square one almost.
Pretty much. The exact number of truly authentic quatrains, we still don't really know for sure. It remains elusive.
But despite all this uncertainty, these poems just captivated the world, didn't they? Translated everywhere.
Almost every major language, yeah. And the story of the Arabic translations is fascinating itself, showing these different approaches.
Tell me about that.
Well, you had Wadi al-Bustani in 1912. He was a pioneer, the first Arab poet to translate them, about 80 quatrains, but he worked from Fitzgerald's English version.
Not from Persian.
No. And he took liberties, used this unique 7-line stanza, but importantly, he opened the door for Arab readers.
Okay, so he kicked things off.
He did.
Yeah.
Then you contrast that with someone like al-Hashimi, who was the first to translate directly from a Persian version into Arabic. He was aiming for accuracy and smoothness.
Just trying to get closer to the source.
Exactly. And then there was al-Safi. His translation was apparently so brilliant, it was said Khayyám himself couldn't have done better. High praise.
Wow.
Later on, al-Sarraf did a prose translation in 1949, noted for just being really exact. And Abdul-Haq Fadl in 1951 put together this huge collection, drawing from 6 different Persian manuscripts.
6 manuscripts. That's thorough.
Very. He was really trying to preserve both the form and the meaning to, quote, convey the Persian taste in Omar's style.
So a real spectrum of approaches, even just within Arabic. What about Europe? Fitzgerald is the big name, obviously.
He is. There were earlier references, people mentioning Khayyám in the 18th, 19th centuries. Hammer Purgstall in 1818 even controversially claimed the poems contradicted Islam.
Stirring the pot early on.
But yeah, the absolute game changer was Edward Fitzgerald's 1859 translation. It just enchanted English and American readers. Its reputation is still, exquisite.
It really captured the imagination.
It did, far more than other attempts. J.B. Nicholas did a French prose version in 1867. Robert Graves did his later English verse translation with Omar Ali Shah. But Fitzgerald's is the one that stuck, the iconic one.
Okay, so we've got the puzzle of the text, the journey through translation. Let's step into Khayyám's actual world. What was it like?
It was an age of profound contrast, really. Born around 1015 A.D. in Naishápúr, our sources call it an age of strange contrasts, political conflicts, and philosophical debates.
Sounds intense.
It was. The big power, the Abbasid dynasty, was weakening, crumbling, which made the whole region vulnerable to invaders.
Like the Seljuk Turks.
Exactly. Khayyám lived right through their rise. They swept through huge territories, took Baghdad in 1055. He lived under famous rulers like Alp Arslan and Malik Shah, prestigious names, but ruling over a really turbulent landscape.
And then the Crusades kicked off too, didn't they, towards the end of his life?
Right, starting around 1095. That just added another massive layer of upheaval politically, socially, economically. Imagine living through constant invasion, shifting power, and then this huge religious conflict erupting.
It definitely shapes your worldview, you'd think.
Absolutely. And within all that, there's this other fascinating shadowy element, the Batiniya movement.
Ah, the Hashashin, right.
Later known as the Hashashin. Yeah. It was a secret sect aiming to get to the inner spiritual meaning of the Quran, the Batin, through allegorical interpretation.
Okay. Where did they come from?
They emerged from the Shia sect of Islam, specifically groups like the Ismailiyya and Karamation. And historically, they gained this, notorious reputation, largely from hostile Sunni sources, mind you, for committing horrible crimes and spreading terror.
So pretty feared. What's Khayyám's connection here?
This is where it gets really intriguing. Hassan Saba, who basically revived the Batiniya movement and became its infamous leader, was apparently a fellow student of Khayyám's, along with Abdul Qasim, who later became the really powerful prime minister, Nizam al-Mulk. They supposedly studied together under the same sheikh.
Wow. Quite a graduating class.
Isn't it? Now, crucially, there's no historical document proving Khayyám met Saba after Saba got involved with the Batiniya. But the movement itself was a huge, scary force in his time.
So even if he wasn't directly involved later, he knew the key figure.
He knew the key figure, and the movement's ideas and reputation were out there. Our sources, again, mainly from hostile accounts or possibly unauthentic secret books, describe some alleged Batiniya beliefs.
Like what?
Things like a belief in worldly pleasures, rejecting traditional prophecy, seeing prophets as just clever, manipulative men, and even supposedly advising followers to encourage doubt about religion and others.
Pretty radical stuff for the time.
Very. And there's that famous, almost legendary story about how they supposedly recruited commandos.
The hashish story.
Yeah. Reportedly, recruits were given hashish, taken to this amazing garden wine, beautiful women, the works, and then told afterwards that their spirit, not their body, had experienced this paradise.
To foster loyalty.
Exactly. Blind loyalty to the leader, the sheik. Now, how much of that is literal truth versus propaganda is debated, but the story itself is powerful.
So the thinking is, if Khayyám was connected or even just influenced by these ideas floating around,
Then you might expect to see echoes in his poetry. Things like the focus on wine, maybe anti-religious sentiments, rejecting heaven and hell, this sort of emblematic treatment of sensual pleasure.
and do we see lines that could fit that?
You definitely can read some lines that way.
Yep.
Fitzgerald's famous version, for instance. Fools, your reward is neither here nor there. Very dismissive. Or, drink, for once dead, you never shall return.
Pretty blunt.
Winfield's translation has that line. Heaven will be empty as this hand of mine, if none who love good drink find entrance there. Again, challenging religious notions.
Right.
And al-Sarraf's translation quotes Khayyám directly saying, a cup of wine, worth much more than a paradise you have promised. Believe not what they tell you about heaven and hell. It sounds quite defiant, doesn't it?
It really does. Which leads us straight into that central debate, the big question.
The core puzzle, was he this hedonist, maybe even an atheist poet, or was he actually a mystic, using Sufi symbols?
Let's explore the Sufi angle. What's that interpretation based on?
Well, the Sufi view argues that things like wine in his poems aren't literal. They're metaphors.
Metaphors for what?
For heavenly love, for the ecstasy of mystical union with the divine. It's symbolic language.
Okay, and people argued Khayyám was doing this.
Oh, yeah. Robert Graves suggested Khayyám was a Sufi poet. J.B. Nicholas, the French translator, tried to frame him as a pantheist or mystic. Even Edward Cowell.
The guy who introduced the poems to Fitzgerald.
That's the one. He believed Omar was a Sufi. Although, interestingly, Wadi al-Bustani, who translated Fitzgerald's version into Arabic, saw Khayyám as an Orthodox Muslim, just maybe less rigid than others. So opinions varied wildly even among translators.
So what exactly is Sufism, for those unfamiliar?
Our sources describe it as a mystical path found within different religions, really. Its core focus is on the power of love as a way to gain direct knowledge, direct experience of God or the divine.
An inner path.
An inner path, yeah. Emphasizing inner separation from everything but God, aiming for this sort of revelation within the heart.
And they use symbolic language, you said.
Very much so. Sufis are known for using this metaphorical language, sometimes even ciphers. There's the ancient Abjad system, for example.
What's that?
It assigns numerical values to Arabic letters. So you can embed hidden meanings, numerical patterns within words or texts. It's like a layer of code underneath.
Fascinating. Any examples related to Khayyám?
Well, Idris Shah, who wrote the Sufis, gives an interesting example with the word Sufi itself. Its numerical value, 186, can apparently be rearranged to form roots, meaning above, transcending, and stood, challenged, implying, Shah suggests, an unchallenged philosophy.
Quite esoteric.
It is. And Shah even applies this to Khayyám's name. Al-Khayyám means the tent maker. But the Arabic root letters can also relate to AKHF, meaning hide or hidden.
Suggesting his poetry itself might be hidden, allegorical.
But that's the implication. It subtly hints that you should maybe look beneath the surface.
And Graves translated a line that seemed to support this secrecy idea.
Yeah, that fugitive quatrain. Conceal the mystery revealed to you from all non-entities, likewise from fools. It sounds like an instruction to keep the deeper meaning secret, doesn't it?
It certainly does. But critics would say this is all a bit subjective, right? Reading meanings into things.
Absolutely. Critics argue there's no solid logical proof for these interpretations. And even Sufi supporters admit their technical terms can be baffling if you're not an initiate.
So it's hard to pin down definitively.
Very. Idris Shah suggests Khayyám's poetry might have multiple functions. You can read it for its surface meaning, or for spiritual growth, or decode it for Sufic study. The debate itself might be part of his lasting appeal.
But what do we actually know about Khayyám the man? Does his character fit any of these labels?
That's a really important question. What we know suggests he doesn't fit neatly into any simple box. He was clearly intelligent, highly educated, sophisticated.
Not some simple drunkard or debauched poet.
No, there's no evidence he was immoral, ill-tempered, or even a drunkard. Remember, he was a favored friend of Nizam al-Mulk, the prime minister, who was known for high ethical standards.
Right, that connection again.
It suggests Khayyám's philosophy, whatever it was, probably came from a place of deep sensitiveness and concern for his fellow man, rather than just simple hedonism or nihilism. It pushes us to look deeper.
And looking deeper brings us back to the translators, doesn't it? How their own views color things. You mentioned that quatrain about existence.
Ah, yes, the reluctant existence quatrain. It's a fantastic example of how translation shapes meaning. It's about being brought into the world unwillingly.
How did different translators handle it?
Well, Al-Sarraf's literal translation really emphasizes this sense of wonder and confusion. Disinclined into this world he brought me, and gained nothing but more wonderment. Reluctantly we leave, not knowing why we came, stayed, or why going.
Okay, quite philosophical.
Then you get Fitzgerald. His version reflects that very Victorian sense of fatalism, almost helplessness, into this universe, and why not knowing, nor whence, like water willy-nilly flowing, and out of it, as wind along the waste I know not whither willy-nilly blowing.
Much more bleak, almost passive.
Very different feel. Robert Graves' version is actually closer to Al-Sarraf's original sense of confusion. In agitation, I was brought to birth, and learned nothing from life but wonder at it. Reluctantly we leave, still uninformed, why in the world we came, or went, or were.
Okay, similar theme, but different wording.
Then Robert Arnault, translating from Nicholas's French version, gives it this sense of almost sad surrender. In the first place, my being was given me without my consent. Then we leave this world with regret, and without having accomplished the aim.
Quite melancholy.
And then, completely different again, Wadi al-Bastani's Arabic version emphasizes man's free will.
Bro.
Without my consent, into this world I came. Reluctantly, I cannot stay. Yet willingly, I can decide to dwell.
Wow, that's almost the opposite. Free will versus fate.
Exactly. It shows so clearly how a translator's own culture, philosophy, the very language they use, molds the meaning. All versions capture this sort of resentment, as the source calls it, but the nuances are worlds apart.
And the source insists Khayyám wasn't just an escapist.
Right. He was never an escapist and a mere sensualist. He was grappling with huge questions. That grappling is the core.
Which leads to another way of looking at the Rubáiyát entirely, doesn't it? Not just as isolated poems, but as a kind of personal journey.
Exactly. This is a really compelling approach. Seeing the poems as reflecting Khayyám's own inner journey, a kind of revolt against the world, followed by a sense of defeat.
Triggered by his times.
Very much so. That age of war and social conflicts, it set his mind and heart astir. It pushed him to question everything, existing theories, societal values. He had this fierce independence of mind.
So what were the stages of this revolt?
You can sort of trace them. First, a revolt against society itself. He seems to have really detested the rotten values, the ignorance he saw around him.
Like hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy, yeah, and especially the hostility of his people toward the scientist and the philosopher. He saw greed and lust as this dangerous disease.
Are there specific lines that show this?
Oh, definitely. That incredibly sharp one. "O city mufti, you go more astray than I do, though to wine I do give way. I drink the blood of grapes, you that of men. Which of us is the more bloodthirsty prey?"
Wow, that's biting. Calling out the religious authority.
Directly challenging them. Or this one. "A sheikh beheld a harlot, and quoth he, You seem a slave to fun, drink, and lechery. She made answer, What I seem I am, but master, are you all you seem to be?" Turning the judgment right back.
Brilliant. Okay, so revolt against society. What next?
Then it seems a revolt against religion itself, questioning its inconsistencies, even challenging God's justice.
How so?
He came to believe heaven and hell weren't actual places, but states within the self. No real existence outside the self, as the source puts it.
Lines to back that up.
That one about paradise being empty. If but the vine and love-abjuring band are in the prophet's paradise to stand alack, I doubt the prophet's paradise were empty as the hollow of one's hand.
Questioning who gets into heaven.
Boldly. And the line. I sent my soul through the invisible, and by my soul returned to me, and answered, I myself am heaven and hell. Locating it all internally. Imagine saying that back then.
Incredibly provocative. Okay, society, religion, what else?
He seems to push further into a revolt against destiny, against existence itself.
How does that manifest?
This feeling that humans are created without consent, maybe destined to sin and then punished for it unfairly. He questions God's goodness, God's mercy.
And he quotes for that.
My presence here has been no choice of mine. Fate hounds me most unwillingly away. That sense of being pushed around by forces beyond control, and even imagining a better creation. If only I controlled God's universe, would I not wipe away these faulty heavens and build from nothing a true paradise where all souls could achieve their heart's desire? It's almost like saying, I could do a better job.
A huge challenge to divine order.
Huge. And even his own intellect, his mind, which was supposed to be his guide, seems to disappoint him in the end. He rebels against its limits, almost welcomes the obscurity of ignorance.
Really?
Yeah, there's a line, those dupes of intellect and logic die in arguments on being or not being. It's like he's saying reason alone isn't enough. It can't solve the ultimate mysteries.
So a disillusionment with reason itself. That leaves what?
Oh, the final, perhaps biggest opponent in his revolt, death.
The inescapable reality.
Exactly. He sees it as this huge, ugly giant blocking every escape, swallowing everything. Death becomes omnipresent. He sees it everywhere.
How does it come across in the poems?
Through these incredibly poignant, almost unsettling images, like, and this reviving herb whose tender green fledges the river lip on which we lean upon it lightly. For who knows, from what once lovely lip it springs unseen.
Seem past beauty and present decay.
Precisely. Or that image of the jug. This jug was, ages past, a doleful lover. Like me, this handle at its neck was once an arm entwined about some neck he loved too well, seeing human history, human love compressed into an everyday object destined to break.
Chilling.
And the ultimate mystery of it. Strange, is it not, that of the myriads who before us passed the door of dark neck through, not one returns to tell us of the road, which to discover we must travel too. That finality, that lack of answers.
So this revolt against death, does he win?
It seems not. It leads to this sense of surrender, maybe defeat, captured in lines like, Khayyám, who stitched the hides for wisdom's tent, has tumbled in grief's clutches. He lies burning. It's like wisdom itself fails him. The shears of death have closed upon his guise, and hope the broker sells him for a song. A sense of ultimate loss. This is where he seems to plead for forgiveness.
So the revolt ends in resignation.
Defeat.
That's how this interpretation reads it. A state of moral isolation, disgust with life's emptiness. If death is the end, what's the point? Make the most of what we yet may spend, before we too into the dust descend.
Carpe diem, but born from despair?
Kind of. Dust into dust and under dust to lie. Sans wine, sans song, sans singer, and sans end. A bleak outlook. And it's here, in this state, that the sake, the cupbearer, arrives.
As a kind of comfort.
As a solace, yeah. Wine becomes the healing tonic, the way to drown the suffering. He asks, cupbearer, come, pour blood-red wine, the world's despite to cure. Where can I find another friend like wine? So genuine, so solacing, so pure.
Turning to wine as the last resort.
Exactly. And this leads to a series of toasts, almost. Each one revealing a different facet of this defeated state.
Okay, what are the toasts?
First, a toast to agonies, acknowledging wine as the last remedy. Then, grimly, a toast to death itself, urging friends. Before fate springs her ambush for your life, command our tavern lad to fetch you drink. Drink now before it's too late.
A dark kind of celebration.
Then a toast to the present moment. That carpe diem again, but tinged with sadness. Yon rising moon looks for us again. How oft hereafter will she wax and wane? How oft hereafter rising look for us through the same garden and for one in vain? Knowing time is running out.
That's beautiful, but so melancholy.
It is. And finally, a toast to wine itself, declaring its worth more than anything in heaven or hell, defiantly saying, my blaze of drunkenness outshines both worlds, your now and your hereafter, embracing intoxication fully.
Wow. So what's his final wish in this reading?
It's incredibly poignant, reflecting this whole journey into wine and resignation. He asks his tavern friends after he dies to wash his body in wine.
Seriously.
Yeah. Build his casket from great fine wood, bury him here at the tavern, and then mold a jug from his dust.
A jug.
Yes. Let them remold me as a jug, that then I may revive, well soused in glorious drink.
Yeah.
He wants to be reincarnated almost as a vessel for the very thing that gave him solace in his despair.
That's quite something.
Isn't it? And his final plea is just heartbreaking. Sweet friends, never forget us. Before you greet the jug, Khayyám adjures you. When his turn comes, turn down his empty bowl. Don't forget me, even in your revelry. Pour one out for me, essentially.
A really powerful, vulnerable image to end on. This whole reading, this journey of revolt and defeat, it's compelling. But it brings us back again to the translators, doesn't it? How much of this is Khayyám and how much is, say, Fitzgerald?
Exactly. That's the constant tension. Fitzgerald's legacy is huge, but our sources are pretty clear. He manipulated the original quatrains to serve his own purpose.
How so? What kind of manipulation?
Well, he consciously altered them to fit his own Victorian taste, maybe project some of his own anti-devotional feelings. That famous opening quatrain, Wake for the Sun. It was inspired by a Persian manuscript, sure, but Fitzgerald essentially created a new meaning with it.
Giving it his own spin.
Definitely. He used imagery like the mythical Garden of Iron to evoke wonder and decadence, even though it wasn't in the original quatrains he was working from. And sometimes he actually reversed the meaning, took an optimistic quatrain and made it pessimistic to fit his overall theme.
So it was less a translation, more a creation.
Our source calls it absolutely not a translation, but a creation of a different scope. Now, that's not necessarily a criticism of its literary merit, his framework, his thematic unity. That's part of why it was so successful. But it wasn't a literal rendering of Khayyám.
Okay. What about Robert Graves? He claimed his was more authentic.
He did, based on that supposedly earlier manuscript. But here's a fascinating twist. Despite criticizing Fitzgerald, Graves seems to arrange his quatrains in such a way as to follow very closely the same sequence used by Fitzgerald.
Really? Even matching specific poems?
Many of them, yeah. It suggests Fitzgerald's structure had a powerful influence, even on someone aiming for more authenticity.
Interesting. And did Graves present a different Khayyám?
His Khayyám is perhaps a bit different. Graves seems to present a figure who seems to repent of his infidelity and to wish to believe again, maybe echoing that Sufi interpretation more. His ending emphasizes Khayyám's good nature and ultimate acceptance of his decorum, God's decorum. So a less rebellious end than Fitzgerald's, maybe.
So different translators, different Khayyáms.
Pretty much. And the source concludes, rather pointedly, that both Fitzgerald and Graves, and probably many others, found in Khayyám the expedient projector of their substantial need to please the appetite of their readers, rather than to satisfy an accurate and honest appreciation of the original poet.
Using Khayyám as a vehicle for their own message or what they thought readers wanted.
Perhaps. It's a complex legacy. But here's the amazing thing. Through all these layers, the uncertain texts, the additions, the translations, the interpretations, even the manipulations, something of Khayyám's core message seems to endure. This powerful simplicity.
Like that quote about love.
Exactly. Love is the title of the world of meanings. Love is the invocation to the song of youth. You who are ignorant of what love is, learn that life is love. That cuts through centuries of debate, doesn't it?
It really does. It's quite ironic in a way.
It's a remarkable irony.
Yeah.
His voice somehow survived, even thrived, despite being misunderstood, misinterpreted, reshaped. It shows how profound words can resonate, even when filtered through so many different lenses.
So, wrapping up this deep dive into Omar Khayyám's riddles, we've really seen him from multiple angles. The historical puzzle of the texts, the philosophical journey, that revolt and resignation idea, and this fascinating story of how his words were constantly reimagined.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey through time and interpretation.
It really leaves you thinking, doesn't it?
It leaves us perhaps with this final thought. Just consider how easily any profound work of art, any deep message, can be reshaped by the lens we view it, through the translator's lens, the reader's lens, our own cultural lens.
Right.
And maybe understanding that lens, understanding the interpreter as much as the creator, can unlock completely new insights into both. It's not just about what Khayyám wrote, but about what we and others before us have read in him.